Hey everyone, so we've been requested to do some more apologetics videos regarding Jesus, salvation, and the gospel. So we're going to begin this entire series of FAQ videos with the historicity of Jesus, and we're going to leave still some room to do some of your actual questions that you have, but just know that we're focusing a ton on Jesus this year for our Friday videos. So if you have any particular questions regarding about Christ, then please feel free to add them in, and we'll add them into the list somewhere if they fit in a particular category that we're going to be covering each month. However, if you have a question that is not necessarily particular to Jesus Christ still, and you still want to be one of our FAQ videos, still feel free to send it in. We'll still cover it and go over it at some point, and we'll make sure we prioritize it. So what I want to do is begin with announcing that for this month, we're going to be taking each Friday to do with the question of, is Jesus a historical figure? Now, while majority, if not every single scholar in the Western world and even in the Eastern world believes that Jesus is a historical figure, there are still people who try to argue that he isn't. And the whole point is to provide some of the documentation that proves that he is. And we'll be using the documents that are from the 1st and 2nd century primarily, because these will be from the closest time period to the Bible and the claimed existence of Jesus Christ, which means there will be enough people in that time period to affirm and to deny. And so if we can find these documents that affirm these things, affirm what the Bible says, at least historically about the existence of Jesus, then we have a good start. So we're going to be beginning this video with Flavius Josephus, and next week will be Tacitus. So Flavius Josephus wrote what is called the Antiquities of the Jews, and he was a Jew himself, not just ethnically, but also religiously. And so his historical work is to provide this context of what took place within this first century. And his writing was written around AD 90 and 95, somewhere in this time gap. And it's before many of the Roman testimonials by Romans historians. And so while he himself is not a Christian, he is a Jew, he still writes this work that talks about, at some point, like in Book 18, about the existence of the Christians and Pontius Pilate and what took place. We're going to focus on two major passages. It's going to be Book 18, Chapter 3, Section 3, and then Book 20, and I'll review Book 20 in a minute. But Book 18, let's go there right now. This is Book 18, Chapter 3. So if you notice, it says, Sedition of the Jews against Pontius Pilate concerning Christ and what befell Paulina and the Jews at Rome. If you go down to section 3, which you can find for free online in public domain, it reads, Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ, and when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men amongst us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at the first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the third day. As the divine prophets had foretold these and then thousands other wonderful things concerning him, and the tribes of Christians, so named from him, are not extinct at this day. Now, to be fair, there are many historians who would find that there's some things in here that are questionable, because we know that, for instance, Church Father Origen declares that Josephus was not a Christian, that he was just a Jew. And so there's some things in here, as you can see, that seem to allude that he did believe these things. Now, Caleb's going to do a video that's going to be more in-depth, dealing with objections to the historical figure of Christ, such as the question of, is this a legitimate document still? And so I'm going to provide a brief, short response, but know that he's going to provide a more in-depth response later, and that you can, if you could please be patient and just wait for that video and save your objections for then. So, looking at this, while there is that question, some scholars believe that there was a possibility that a Christian, yes, may have put some changes in there, but they probably weren't doing it intentionally. They're probably just doing it because they were a copyist, and then when they were going through, they saw someone put their own notes next to the side because they were Christian reading it, or one like manuscript copies, and the copyist was probably just being careful and make sure to copy in the things that were written there to make sure nothing was left out. Now, again, this is not a fully fleshed out argument or response to the objection. It's just one I want to make sure I put in the ring. And remember that Caleb will deal with this more in depth later. But the point is that even when scholars have tried to strip away the things that seem to be of Christian influence, it still seems to be that majority of the writing here is still authentic to Josephus. And the very fact that even if you take out the whole idea about him being the Christ, him being the Messiah, and rising from the third day, you still get the very issue of his existence and the fact that Christians derive their name from Christ. So we have reasons to trust, based on the manuscripts we do have of Josephus, which isn't many, but we have enough that are comparable to other documents. There's enough there to affirm what was probably the original writing, and that it still affirms the existence of Jesus. But now we're going to get into another one, which is book 20. This will be in the chapter 9, section 1. And this is another one that's pretty important. So let's start at right here at Festus. Festus was now dead, and now a proper opportunity to exercise his authority. Festus was now dead. Festus was now dead, and Albinus was but upon the road. So he assembled the Sanhedrin of judges, who brought before him the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James, and some others. Okay, and this is depicting the death of James, who wrote the book of James. And so what's important here to see is that as he's characterizing the end of James, that he's identifying who James is, and that is the brother of Jesus. And Jesus was a popular name at this point in time in Jewish history, so he provides some clarity. He refers to him as who was called Christ. Now, notice what's different between this section and the section before. In the section before, they have the bracket that says the Christ. They have brackets as the before the word Christ, but in this one is just called Christ. At this point in time in history, it was pretty common to refer to this Jesus of Nazareth as if Jesus and Christ were synonymous in name, so there wasn't really concern to refer to him whether it be just Jesus or as Christ, and sometimes to bring clarity, they refer to him as Christ because that's what people intend to know him as, since Jesus was such a popular name. And so what we get here is not just an affirmation of James' existence and what happened to him when he died, but we get the very fact that this James is the brother of the Jesus who is believed to be the Christ. And so what we get here is with Josephus, who is writing this somewhere between 80, 90, 95, is an affirmation that Jesus Christ did exist, and this is a historian who's confirming the existence of Jesus. Now, again, this is not the only document here, and we're not going to base everything just based off one document. We're going to look at Tacitus later, and then we're going to get into some good arguments for the Bible, as well as some other authors who seem to affirm the existence of Jesus around this time period. But we can get here is if we have documents that are pointing to the existence of Jesus within the 1st century and beginning of the 2nd century, which is easily at a point in time when it could be falsified and proven that it's not true that he existed, but we find that there is affirmation that he did exist, and these documents still hold today, that we have every good reason to believe going forward that Jesus did in fact exist as a historical figure. Does this prove who he is as a person? Not necessarily, but we're just right now trying to set the groundwork of, did Jesus exist? Because if he did, then we can start looking at his teachings, the miracles, and everything that took place. So this is just one document, the Antiquities of the Jews. You can find this for free because of its public domain. You can find it on archive.org. You can find it in like many places to download. We can even link it below for you guys. And so I recommend as you guys check it out, as remember book 18 and book 20. But if you want to read more about Jewish history at this point in time, I recommend going through it. And this would be a really helpful document to point to the existence of Jesus Christ. This is just one document. We're going to go through another one next week, and I hope that this was helpful in discovering the truth of the historicity of Jesus.